It's an interesting space, like with AI. It's 5 years ago, hiring managers had the same concern. Is this person really doing it or is somebody else doing it? I think that'll always exist. With AI, who cares who wrote the code as long as you can understand, implement, and solve for it if there's problems
Yes,
and build on
yes.
it. So, my personal opinion, and granted, I don't write code, is just like let the reality of where we're at and incorporate that into your hiring process.
I
Um,
agree. I am okay with them using AI. Even during our live interview, I was actually open to them using AI, but not having AI code the whole thing because as a programmer, you need to ask the right questions at AI as well, not just putting all the questions in. So making sure that they know what they're doing and they know the
yeah.
thought process that is behind it, that's important.
And that's really what you need to be screening for is their
Hmm.
ability to still be learning even though they're not writing the code. They
Knowing what the code actually says.
Welcome to your next tech startup. I am Isabel Rasmussen. Today we are having an engineering leadership conversation about hiring experiences with Aisya Aziz. Aisya, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Isabel. I'm Aisha. I'm the Director of Engineering at Liquidonate. I've been in engineering since 2013. I've started hiring a couple years after. I've hired over 20 full stack engineers. I've hired testers. I've hired product managers through my engineering career.
Today, we're going to talk about some of the experiences that you've had, things that you've learned, and hopefully, new hiring managers can learn things from that. And also, software engineers, it's always great for them to get perspectives of how hiring managers are thinking about hiring. First question for you is what is one of the things that you thought was kind of easy or not very complicated about hiring engineers when you were an IC that then changed as you became a hiring manager?
So at first, I really thought it was just more programming, right?
Okay.
Testing their programming capability, have that sort of programming question for them to answer. So when I first hired, I prepare all these questions, all these programming questions, all these critical questions, even questions I've seen, because like I interviewed before and I see all these elite code questions where
Yeah.
it tests the programmer's capabilities. And then I did that, and what I found out is sometimes it's like in the end, when we are actually
Mhm.
doing programming, we are not actually doing all these complicated engineering questions all the time.
And just to clarify, like when you say programming questions, because like when I think of technical interviews,
Mhm.
I think of like systems design interviews, live coding interviews, take
Yes.
home exercises, technical deep dives. I fortunately have never worked with a hiring manager who uses Elite Code. So I don't have as much experience there. So like let's talk a little bit about like what these programming questions that you thought were important were. And feel free to speak to the software engineers. You don't have to cater to my misunderstanding.
So in terms of that, it's more like live coding for me. Just throw like 5, 10 questions to them. And
Okay.
that was my first experience interviewing, and I don't think that's the right way to go.
The
Mhm.
reason why you went that route is because that's what you had experienced as a candidate. So you
Yes.
thought this is the right way to interview.
Yes,
Okay.
also how I prepared myself before this, sort of
Okay.
just going through all these lead code questions.
Okay. So you're just kind of like, this is the standard.
Yes.
Okay. And so when we're talking about lead code, we're talking about brain teasers,
Yeah.
almost like trying, kind of like, I feel like the idea is like you're trying to trick the candidate versus support the candidate.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so that is the kind of, you know, day one hiring manager. That was how you wanted to do things.
Yeah.
And then what did you learn?
In a way, I mean, at that point, I thought I'll get, like, by doing this interview, I'll get the best of the best kind of
Uh
thing.
huh.
But yeah, that was not what I discovered. So I hired some people, I hired some engineers who were top of the stack. And I
Hmm.
also hired some engineers that I thought was more like I could have conversation with. And I was like, even though this person was not able to answer all the questions I had, but I had a good conversation with. So I wanted to take a risk with this
Okay.
engineer. It ended
Okay, to
happening.
clarify, you had these two different hires. One was this person who just like amazing leak code, killed it on everything. This other person who didn't demonstrate that they were this amazing engineer, but you liked how they maybe thought about the problems. You
Hmm.
enjoyed the technical conversation that
Yeah.
you had with them. You thought maybe you could mentor them up to being a higher
Yes.
level engineer. Okay,
Yes.
so we have these two people and then you hire both of them and what do you actually learn about them?
So what ended up happening was this engineer who was like really good.
Mhm,
I mean, this person is still good. Even until now,
mhm,
they're still good. But I guess in a way, we figured out that person wasn't much of a culture fit. It was
okay,
hard to have conversation with. It was hard to, for example, brainstorm together. And then this other engineer that I'm with, coming from the company, it was at that time I was in a family business. It's we bootstrap a software as a service company, and this other engineer was more someone I can groom with and someone I can work together, someone I can grow with together with the company that I figured out. And it's just a much nicer culture fit in a way, being able to
and
really have that conversation.
then the person who was a stronger culture fit, did you find that they were actually a stronger engineer than you had initially thought, or did you need to mentor them up, or a combination?
It's a combination. They are still good. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like in terms of day to day, they're able to do day to day really well.
Mhm.
Um, but I was able to really grow together and
Okay.
really have more of a, like in terms of what we need day to day.
Is it maybe kind of like the person who is able to get the day-to-day done and you're able to communicate with and work with in a way that best supports the company
Yes,
is a better
yes.
hire for you than the person who can do all these amazing things, but because your communication and collaboration isn't there, they're not necessarily achieving the business goals. Was
Yes.
that so someone who can understand the business goals and work better with you at the end, you are going to build a better product with, even
Hmm.
if their coding abilities are not, at least in the interview process, demonstrated as the top 1%.
Yes.
Um, okay.
But
And so that's a great kind of starting point of like what you learned early on.
mhm.
And I think that so many hiring managers learn that same thing. And it's just interesting hearing why you went through that experience, like what you had been used to, how you thought things were. And so let's talk about like now today, when you're thinking about hiring, how you design an interview process and what interviews you prioritize differently.
Yeah. So for right now, I wouldn't have like 10 questions prepared. I
Okay.
usually would just prepare like two, three questions,
Uh-huh.
where we would go through them together. I want to really listen to their thought process, not like a complicated question at all. I just want to listen
Okay.
to their thought process. So it's in a way like the problem is designed to be more of something you think about before you start programming. That's how,
Give an example of like a question that you like to ask.
for example, in terms of liquidonate, for backend engineer, how would you start designing? I have these item details and I have this endpoint. How would they connect to that endpoint? I would just get them to write in whatever tech stack they are experienced with and just see how they come up with this. It's a simple, straightforward question. And then
Uh-huh.
from there, I see how their thought process is. And I start
Uh-huh.
with like, how would you design the database for this?
Okay.
Seeing how they grow from one
Okay.
question to another.
Okay. And then with that, because it is like a company specific question, there is there is an element of like having to understand the business problem that I'm assuming in a leak code question that the understanding the business problem doesn't exist. You're getting, can I explain our business and them understand the space, which is not a coding problem, but
Mhm.
like, and so you're starting from there, but then you're focusing on technical problems that your team works on regularly versus like some binary tree thing.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
we know, for example, binary tree, like that rarely happens.
Okay, so you are still doing live coding,
I still
but
do that.
it's more of a back and forth conversation and an understanding their thought process versus like something particular about how they solve a problem and there only being like one right answer.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. With that, I will go through like a deep dive as well after that.
Mhm.
So if you have more time, what would you do? What would you
Mhm.
improve on? From there, I'll see more of what this person's priority is, more of what
Mhm.
they think would be a good use of time.
Right, and just trying to, like,
Uh-huh,
understand kind of how they go about, thinking through things. And
uh-huh.
now let's shift. You had shared the behavior interviews were not something that you had done previously. Um, Now that you are focused on behavior interviews, what are the things that are important to you? What are the type of questions that you focus on?
So for me, one is definitely like telling me about themselves, like just knowing them. Prior to the interview, I would actually review their LinkedIn profile as well,
Mhm.
just to see like what are they comfortable with. And sometimes we have candidates with more experience versus fresh. So knowing
Mhm.
how to frame the question, I will definitely ask what projects have they worked on, what
Okay.
did they do specifically, challenges during the implementation of the project.
So when you're asking about challenges in a project, what are you looking to learn about them? What's your ideal outcome there?
One is being able to see what kind of things do they consider as a challenge as well. Challenge is teamwork. Sometimes a person's challenge is convincing others that what they are doing is they are how they are doing things are the better way of doing things. So from there, I would be able to see like what is their challenge and technically how do they improve themselves, good versus
Self-awareness would have to be something, right? So you'd have to
yes.
have they'd have to be able to demonstrate self-awareness to be able to speak about improving
Mm-hmm,
themselves.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so self-awareness, improving, obviously like kind of that ability to learn and grow.
They would actually admit like they are at fault at that time. They didn't know better at that time. They didn't have enough experience, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We just want to see them, yeah, like you mentioned, like being able to really learn from it and grow from it, and see like, I guess in a way also see what really matters for them. That becomes a challenge.
All right, and then let's totally kind of switch things up. So, we've talked about how you entered into thinking about hiring and now where you are with things. What is something that has changed for hiring for you over the last couple of years? The industry has shifted in that there's a lot more candidates to consider for roles than there used to be. AI is coming in, and I think there's a lot of conversation around, do you interview people on their ability to utilize AI or not? There's just so much going on right now. So anything that you've recently changed or incorporated because of all these different dynamics?
So one of the things I was actually sometimes if we are looking into a more experienced engineer, we would actually do take home. And take home, we don't expect them to spend so much time on take home, like 1 and 2 hours tops. For me, like take home helps sort of like going through and see which of the candidate are more interested in the company rather than, like sometimes AI helps them apply to all these companies and they probably have like 100 applications. So I think in a way the take home helps them to actually see like all these applications. If they really want to work at our company, they would actually work on the take home, like spend like 1 hour. I try not to make the take home too complicated, but take home was more to gauge their interest sort of. But actually with ChatGPT, with all these open AI capabilities,
Yeah.
people can just, use OpenAI to answer any of the take-home questions.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's actually a little bit difficult as well. So what we did from there is after the take-home question, we will do a deep dive on that
Yeah.
take-home question. So instead of them just answering the take-home question, I want to see again their thought process of the take-home question.
Yeah.
What did they really like on that take-home? And if they have more time, what would they really work on? So
I think that's an interesting. Okay, so like to me there's two components. Like I think always a take home should include a, unless it's just like horrendous, like what's returned back. It should be followed up with an interview that is a conversation about the take home so that you can understand their thinking about things. It's an interesting space like with AI. It's 5 years ago hiring managers had the same concern. Is this person really doing it or is somebody else doing it? I think that'll always exist. With AI, who cares who wrote the code? As long as you can understand, implement, and solve for it if there's problems
yes,
and build on it.
yes,
Like that's, where we need to be. So, my personal opinion, and granted, I don't write code, is just like let the reality of where we're at and incorporate that into your hiring process.
I
Um,
agree. I am okay with them using AI. Even during our live interview, I was actually open to them using AI, but not having AI code the whole thing because as a programmer, you need to ask the right questions at AI as well, not just putting all the questions in. So making sure that they know what they're doing and they know the
yeah.
thought process that is behind it, that's important.
And that's really what you need to be screening for is their
Hmm.
ability to still be learning even though they're not writing the code. They
Knowing what the code actually says.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think like shifting how interviews happen in that way. The other thing I will say is I hate making people go through all of these hoops, but it is complicated in this new market where we're dealing with a lot more applicants than we're used to. Something that I have started doing, which I would never have done 5 years ago, is asking people to share more about themselves before I get them on the phone. For one company in the job description, a lot of bullets about who they are as a person. So I sent to hundreds of applicants, I'd send out this, hey, I'd like to know more about you beyond your resume. The ones that I would was much more likely to interview. Then recently with the podcast, I've started doing episodes talking about the open roles. So I just did a reach out and said, hey, watch this episode and just send me a couple of bullets of what you thought about it. And in that reach out, I did say, don't use ChatGPT to answer this email. And the reason that is because ChatGPT's answers are such like bullshit, generic, like
Yeah.
fluffy crap that tells me nothing about the person. And so like that's fine, like whatever. I use ChatGPT to improve my written stuff,
Writing.
but
Yeah.
like don't do it in a way that you're like empty and void. So I would recommend to you consider kind of playing around with something like that where and that's like a 10-minute engagement, but I do think that that really helps me in that filter of are you really like interested in this role beyond the just I knew it took you 2 minutes to apply. And did you really
Yeah.
think about it? Because I'm pretty sure you didn't read the job description because you told me that you're a Java engineer and I'm not hiring a Java engineer.
Yeah, that's where I share similar sentiments in my recent hire. We know there's actually AI for everything, even there's AI for interview. So in my recent hire, there was this one candidate that was actually pretty good. Their technical questions were good, but I couldn't have a conversation with him. I felt like I was actually interviewing an AI because when I asked something
Yeah.
technical, they answered perfectly. But it's like, you know how when you ask something
There's a
and someone
pause.
just answers, no, 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 it's
Oh no.
answer exactly that answer. Like, for example, I ask you, like, what do you eat today? And then they answer, I eat rice. So it's like
Um,
their answers are very static and didn't feel like a genuine conversation that I was
Oh,
having. So
interesting.
even though their answers were good, but I felt like I was talking to an AI. So that was, I ended up actually not moving forward with this candidate. So
Yeah.
their answers were good. I don't know,
Yeah.
for some reason I felt like I was
Every
talking to an
hiring
AI.
manager I have talked to is experiencing the exact same thing. I was experiencing it until I implemented the asking the questions and having them write a reply before I
Mhm.
spoke to them on the phone. That wasn't my intent, but I eliminated all of the AI answer people. It's been great. I get to talk to, it's not like you're not talking to a human, although I will say there has been some times that I thought I wasn't talking to a human, but you're looking for a genuine conversation and you don't get that in using AI. So, speaking of genuine conversations, this has been a wonderful one. I've really enjoyed connecting with you and hopefully, others listening have enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your experience with me.
Thank you so much, Isabel.
Okay.